it's got to be, it's usually a chronic property. It's a property that's had chronic problems for some time, but it's got to have alcohol or drug activity or gang activity that's going on. We recognize that there's lots of other problems that people have with their properties, loud noises at night, barking dogs, things like that. Those aren't things that we focus on. We focus specifically on the alcohol, drug, and gang stuff. And I think that if you haven't been impacted by such a property, you all can probably imagine that if you're on one street and the whole street has really nice houses and good neighbors, and then you have one house that is a drug house, that's going to impact every single person on that street. It will completely change the dynamics of that street. And so this project or this program specifically addresses that problem. Neighborhood mobilization, it's really about getting community members involved, neighbors involved, to really take some action specifically around this property, and it's done in a very safe way. So state law dictates that if you have a property, you're supposed to use it in a reasonable way, and you're not supposed to be doing crazy stuff and you know, impacting the quality of life of other neighbors. The California Civil Code, and you have this information in the handout that I gave you. California Civil Code section 3479, which defines nuisance, specifically says anything which is injurious to health or is indecent or offensive to the senses or an obstruction to the free use of property so as to interfere with the comfortable enjoyment of life or property or unlawfully obstructs the free passage or use in the customary manner or any area is a nuisance. So this program, again, uses this civil code as a tool to address the problem. Again, for us, it specifically has to be alcohol, drug, or gang activity. Steps, and the 4 steps are documentation, notification, negotiation or mediation, and then litigation. Most of the times, these properties, the work that's done around these properties do not go to litigation. The problems are really solved before having to go to that extent. The documentation, I'm going to go through each one of these so that you all... Documentation is basically writing down the details of what's happening, what you're observing, what you're seeing going on. What's really important in this is to document how your quality of life is being impacted. Say, for example, if you have kids and you're afraid to let your kids go out and play in the front yard because you're concerned about whatever's happening in the house across the street, you'd want to write that down. I was afraid to let my kids go out, for fear that something would happen. This is an example of an activity log. Again, this is where typically what happens when we get a call, and a lot of times we get a call from the police department that says, we really need help with this property, and we've got some neighbors that are really interested in getting together and figuring out what can be done. So then what we'll do is we'll go meet with the neighbors in a place that is not going to be threatening, or we're not going to meet in the property that's right across from the problem property. We'll meet in a place like this, and we'll go through these all of this information. As I said, the documentation is really important. This is an example of an activity log. You have the date, the time of when the activity took place, a description of what the activity was, and then you want to call the police department and make sure you get an incident number that you would write down with that as well. And if you have one of these properties in the neighborhood, then what we would do is we'd come back and we'd go through this presentation in much more detail. But this is, as Angela had said, for the SEPTED and the crime-free multi-housing, it's just kind of an overview right now, but we would come back later. So how it works is the neighbors get together, 6, 8, 10, 15 neighbors, whoever is really impacted by this problem, gets together. We work with them on how to do the documentation. The neighbors do the documentation for a period of time, usually a couple of weeks, maybe a month. And then we bring in a person who has a legal background, and he will sit down and he'll look at the documentation and say, oh, this is definitely a case that we can take forward, and write a letter to the property owner. So the first step for the letter is, the first letter that goes out would be, members in the community have come together, they've identified a problem on your property, here's some of the things that are happening, you need to take care of these, or further actions will be taken. So that property owner has 30 days to respond, hopefully fix whatever the problems are, make them stop happening for 30 days. If that doesn't happen, then there'll be another letter that goes out to that property owner. The third letter is the letter that gets to the place where the community then would need to become. Through this process, the community stays confidential. There's no names of specific, whoever lives across the street. It's all completely anonymous. Everybody's, protected so that nobody knows who's sending the letter. The letter actually comes from the legal advisor that we have on this, so there's no, the South West Chula Vista Civic Association. It doesn't come from that. It doesn't come from, Joe Smith on the corner. It comes from the Safe Streets Now letterhead. So everybody remains anonymous. As I said, it details the list of problems. It says what solutions need to be done and how the issue needs to be taken care of, potential costs to the property owner, and then the contact information for the legal advisor. So all communications go from the property owner to the legal advisor. The community members stay out of it. The point at which the community members would need to come forward is if you get to that third phase, which is when it would go to small claims court. If it goes to small claims court, then the community members that are involved in this would have to go before the judge. And the way small claims court is now is each member of the family can sue for up to $7,500. And so, this process is kind of designed to put financial pressure on that property owner. So if you have 10 neighbors that have come together around a problem property, that's $75,000. And so that property owner is going to be more motivated to address and fix the problems so that they don't have to go to court and stand before a judge with 10 neighbors standing next to them saying, look, all this stuff has happened, you have all the documentation, it's all there, and then the judge says, well, you need to fix the problem, it's gone to court. At least here in San Diego, I can't speak for other places around the country, but I know the legal advisor that we worked with years ago that did this program, and then the one we work with now, every case that's gone to court has ruled in favor of the neighbors. As I said, most of the cases don't go to court, but Angela or Richard will tell you that from a law enforcement standpoint, law enforcement can only do so much, and the problem just keeps going on and on and on and on, and the community continues to be impacted, and the problem continues to happen, and the community keeps calling law enforcement. Law enforcement can only do so much. So this is really a tool for community to take action in a safe way with a financial impact that helps move that property owner to really take some action and not just ignore the problem and say, well, we're not going to do anything. So again, most of the time the problems are taken care of by the second letter, and you don't need the third letter. So sometimes what happens is that there'll need to be negotiations, and this is where potentially mediation, sitting down with the property owner and saying, well, gosh, but you guys have this stuff going on. The property owner's like, well, no, we don't. Well, yeah, you do. Here's all the documentation. In litigation, I told you that most of the time the cases don't go to litigation. And I do